Okay, so today for 8.4, we are looking at two-way frequency tables. So what two-way frequency tables do is they tell us how two events or circumstances relate to each other and how frequently they happen. And then we're going to put everything together on a table. So, few notes up here at the top. For these tables, each row and column, so rows go from side to side and columns go up and down. Each row and column must add to its total either on the left or the bottom. So everything's going to have to total up to the totals on the, just kidding, that should say right. That should say right. On the right or the bottom of our table. So every row totals up to the right, every column totals up to the bottom. The total of all of our rows will equal the total of all of our columns, and that will equal the number in the bottom right-hand corner. So the bottom right number. Okay, and then our last little piece of notes is that we are going to ask you some questions where we say what percentage of blank are blank. In order to calculate those percentages, you are going to want to take your part divided by the whole times 100. So that's just how we calculate a percentage, is part divided by whole times 100. Okay, so those are our general notes. On your note sheet, we are going to fill the tables out completely. On your assignment, they're already partially filled out for you. So the beginning step of what we're doing in notes will not be something that you have to do in your assignment. So, first example we have says 200 people were asked if they preferred hot dogs or hamburgers. 80 of them were kids, 88 people preferred hot dogs, and 53 of these were kids. So that is a lot of information that we need to put into this table, and then we're going to use that information to fill out the rest of the table. And again, this first step will already be done for you on your assignment. So, first thing that we need to look at is how our table is set up. We've got a row for adults, a row for kids, and then a row for totals. We've got a column for hot dogs, a column for hamburgers, and a column for totals. We're going to start by putting these 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers where they go. So the first one is that 200 people were asked total. So that number is going to go in our very bottom right-hand corner because that is our total of all totals. That's how many people altogether were asked. The next thing we're told is that 80 of them were kids. So that tells us that our total number of kids is 80. So that's going to go over in the total kids. The next thing we are told is that 88 people preferred hot dogs. So that means the total of the people who preferred hot dogs is 88. So that's going to go in hot dog total. And then the last thing is that 53 of those were kids, which means that 53 people who preferred hot dogs were kids. So that's going to go in kids hot dog. 53 right here. So we've now just put the information from the paragraph into the table. Does anyone have any questions right now? Yes.
I don't really have a question. I know how many adults.
Okay, that's what we're about to do. So now we use our totals and the information we're given to fill in all of the blanks. So we can work in a lot of different orders. Anytime you know two things in a column or two things in a row, you can find the third missing item. So we can go in a lot of different orders, and no matter what order you go in, you should end up with the same answers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn down the brightness on my calculator a little bit. Okay, I'm going to start over down here with the total number of people who chose hot dogs. I know that that's 88. So if 88 people chose hot dogs, then the rest of them must have chosen hamburgers. So I'm going to do 200 minus 88, which gives me 112, which goes right here. That's the total number of people that chose hamburgers. Any questions about that? Okay, next thing that we're going to do is we can go up a row, and we know that of the 80 kids, 50 of the 3 of them chose hot dogs. So we can figure out how many of them chose hamburgers. So we can do 80 minus 53. And that gives us 27. Then from here, we can go in any direction, or we can do any of these columns next, because we know how many kids there were that chose hot dogs, kids that chose hamburgers, and kids total. And so then we can just use that, because we know all of our totals for each of those as well, to figure out how many adults there were. So we can do 88 minus 53, and that's how many adults chose hot dogs. That's 35. Then we can do 112 minus 27 to figure out how many adults chose hamburgers. That gives me 85. And then we have two options here to fill in our last box, which is that we can add up how many adults there were total, or we can subtract how many kids there were from total to get the adults. So I'm going to add these up. I'm just going to add up this row. 35 plus 85 is 120. So your rows always have to add up to the right side. Your columns add up to the bottom. So if you know the total, you can use subtraction to figure out the missing piece. Any questions right now? Okay, I want to show you guys that you can check your work on these by adding them up and then adding them up this way. So we can do 35 plus 85 equals 120. 53 plus 27 equals 80. And then 88 plus 112 equals 200. So I added up all my rows and they all work. Then I can add up all of my columns. So 35 plus 53 equals 88. 85 plus 27 equals 112. And 120 plus 80 equals 200, and all of those check out as well. So you can always check your work like that. Okay, after we've created our two-way frequency tables, we're going to answer a few questions. On this one, the first question is, which food did more kids like? So how many kids liked hot dogs? Okay, so we come here for kids, hot dogs, 53. How many kids like hamburgers? 27. So which one did they like more? Hot dogs. There you go. So that one, we look at the numbers and we decide which one they like. The next two questions ask percentages. So the next one, and on these percentage ones, you've got to pay attention to what you're asking and then what you're asking it out of. So it says, what percentage of people who prefer hot dogs were kids? So it's out of the people who prefer hot dogs. So 88 total people preferred hot dogs. So that's going to go on the bottom of my fraction. And then out of those 88, 53 of them were kids. So to find my percentage, I'm going to do 53 divided by 88 times 100. I'm going to round to the nearest percent today, so that would round to 60%. Okay. The next question we're asked is what percentage of adults prefer hamburgers? So for that one, we need to look at the total number of adults, which is 120. And then we need to ask ourselves how many of them chose hamburgers, which is 85. So for that percentage, we're going to do 85 divided by 120 times 100. This one, we round that to 71% because it's 70.8. So that rounds up to 71%. Awesome. So that is our whole first example. Any questions right now? Okay, flip this over then. We've got one more on the back. This one is about cars and trucks. 150 people were asked whether they prefer cars or trucks. So that means we have 150 people total, and that can go in the bottom right-hand corner. 75 country drivers, 75 people who live in the country, were polled. So that means our total of country drivers is 75. The next thing it tells us is that 50 city drivers preferred cars. So out of the city drivers, 50 of them chose cars. And then 85 total drivers preferred cars. So that means our car total is 85. Okay, so I have just put in the information we're given, and now we have to solve to find our unknowns. I'm going to let you guys help me out. What is something that we can solve for first? What's something?
The total for city.
Total for city. What's the total for city? Chelsea, what's the total for city? How would we get that?
Might subtract it.
Yes, so we do 150 minus 75. 150 minus 75 is 75. So that is our total for city. Okay, then what is another one now that we can figure out? Michaela?
How many country drivers prefer cars?
So we can do country drivers that prefer cars. So we can do 85 minus 50, which is 35, and that's going to go here. And then from here, we can fill out anything in this next column because we have two things already. So I'm just going to start from the top. If there's 75 total people from the city and 50 of them like cars, how many of them must like trucks? 25. Because you can either say 75 minus 50 is 25, or you can say 50 plus what number is 75. Next one I can do, I can say, next one I can do, I can say I've got 75 total country drivers and 35 of them chose cars. So I can say 35 plus what is 75, or I can do 75 minus 35 is 40. And then my last space here, there's always going to be two ways to do the last space. You can always add to get it or subtract to get it. I'm going to add to get it here. I know that 25 city drivers chose trucks, 40 country drivers chose trucks. 25 plus 40 is 65. And then if I wanted to, I could add everything up to total it all together. I'm going to check this one. It's 85 plus 65 is 150. 75 plus 75 is 150. Any questions right now? Okay, we've got a few questions to answer about this one then. We don't have questions, but we do have these questions. So the first one is, which vehicle do more people like? So which vehicle was more popular? Cars. There's 85 versus 65. So cars were definitely more popular. The next question is, what percentage of people who prefer cars live in the country? So we just pointed out that 85 people prefer cars. So that's going to go on the bottom of my fraction. And then out of those people who prefer cars, 35% of them, or 35 of them, not 35%, 35 of them live in the country. Zoom out a little bit so I can fit my calculator on here. So I'm going to do 35 divided by 85 times 100. And that gives me 41%. And then my next question is what percentage, or my last question is what percentage of country drivers, so there are a total of 75 country drivers, and it's what percentage of them prefer trucks, and so 40 of them chose trucks, so it's going to be 40 out of 75. 40 divided by 75 times 100 gives me 53%. Yes.
Wait, so in the touch. Oh, I got wrong.
Okay. Any questions right now? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording then. We can go ahead and glue in our note sheets by recording.